Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at MP Materials. It is time for another update, and today we'll be discussing the structure that seems to be following very well to the downside as per our expectations, since we have formed here an initial 5-wave move down. But before we get there, I would like to go quickly through the larger time frame for any of you who might be new. And here we are kind of open for a couple of ideas. So we are right now tracking an ABC movement to the upside that is expected still to extend further. But since within this wave B we have retraced so deeply, we have nearly formed a new all-time low basically, I am actually also open for an interpretation where this would be a larger initial wave 1 to the upside, and in the end we will have, once this structure is complete, a nearly identical area of support that would allow further continuation higher within both scenarios. But right now we are focusing here on the internal structure that would be forming in this area to the upside, which right now is being tracked in a couple of interpretations as well, and it is within the idea of a large leading diagonal to be forming, or an ending diagonal in the wave C scenario. But it is a diagonal pattern in both of them, and while an impulse is technically still possible in the idea that this could be a series of 1-2 setups, it's not necessarily at the forefront of what we are tracking here within this chart. Yeah, sure, it could still work out, but in the end it will have very similar areas of support and basically identical areas of support with what we are tracking here in the yellow interpretation. But it's a bit more of a hopium scenario and isn't necessarily based on the broader market sentiment. Now, with that said, we can move here into the smaller time frame where, yeah, in the previous video, I believe I had provided you, maybe even a couple of videos ago, but I provided you these areas of support when we formed here this significant stop within either the wave A in yellow or the wave 3 in white, and then we are looking for a wave 4 correction in the idea of the white scenario and a wave B correction within the idea of the yellow interpretation. Right now, we have already achieved getting to both areas of support, and they do heavily overlap. This is more for an idea of what interpretations are possible for this chart, where in the yellow interpretation we expect to form a 5-wave move to the upside, while in the white scenario we only expect an ABC structure, and once that is actually complete we expect the larger pattern to be complete as well. Yeah, we would no longer expect any continuation higher as we would here in the yellow interpretation, where realistically only the third wave would have been completed at that point. Now, with this said, we have been still expecting further continuation lower, and at the moment it is still the case. We still expect the price to continue into lower regions as we have formed here an initial 5-wave move to the downside here, yeah, even within an impulse that we are now tracking as a wave A. And then we had the resistance area for the wave B correction between the $65.4 all the way up to the $86.5 level, where we expected to find the resistance point that would trigger the reversal in a continuation in a wave C to the downside. Now, in this case, we seem to have already topped in the previous video within this correction. We had here this wave B top placed already, and we had the idea of a possible extension within the wave B, and we even held the area of support, but it did not manage to form another high, thus invalidating right now the interpretation in green. And sure, we did not completely actually break it, we did not fall below the beginning of this wave A, but surely enough it is quite deep, and I don't really have any realistic expectation for this to extend any higher, and I am fully focusing on this larger wave C that is expected to form within the orange interpretation in a 5-wave move. Now, since we have the wave B top and the wave A bottom, we can actually even track an ideal target for such an extension within the wave C, and this would be the 100% extension of the wave A, which is around the $33.3 level. Now, I want to stress the fact that this is an ideal target and we don't need to get there, but it is generally a level that this wave C is drawn towards. Yeah, it can actually even exceed the 100% extension, and it would be no problem. It happens very often. It's just that the most common target is this 100%. Now, internally within the wave C, again, we are expecting to form a larger 5-wave move to the downside, and I could already have a pretty good guess, and this could be a pretty good guess to have already a 1-2 in place and be tracking now a larger wave 3 correction. Now, as within the initial wave 1 to the downside in this part of this wave C, we have only a 3-wave move. Yeah, this cannot really be very clearly counted as a 5-wave move, and I probably even prefer the idea of a 3-wave move to be going on in this area. I am also expecting in that case a larger ABC structure to form within the wave 3. And before we get to the actual structure within this wave 3, I actually also want to give you here an ideal target for the overall wave 3, and that would be the 138.2% extension of the wave 1, the $47.2 level. Now again, we also don't need to stop here within the wave 3, but it is rather expected to get to this level within the actual wave 3. Yeah, if this really is a third wave to the downside, the probabilities highly suggest that this level should be reached. And then in this structure, again, since we are tracking an ABC movement to the downside, I would actually assume that the wave A has not necessarily bottomed, and while it is possible to already have here an early bottom within a wave A in the idea of a 3-wave move to the downside, but honestly, nothing is really preventing me from still tracking this movement, this ongoing downtrend as part of the initial wave A, as right now this structure actually fits in even within the idea of an impulse to be forming to the downside, where I could argue that here we may have a series of 1-2 setups that have formed within this area, and then this would be a third wave down, fourth wave up, and then a fifth wave that would be still ongoing. And in fact, this structure kind of reminds me of what we covered yesterday on the Oklo chart. Now, we won't go there and check explicitly if this is very similar, but yeah, it kind of reminds me with what we actually discussed yesterday. And we will be discussing in a moment the actual structure that we expect to further continue to the downside within this latest movement, this latest fifth wave, because I don't believe even this internal wave 5 is actually done. But I also wanted to point out a couple of additional important things. So this could have been, or this could be in a separate interpretation, a wave A bottom, and in that case we would be looking for a wave B correction, and this is the ultimate resistance area that we can realistically track, that if broken we would have a signal, an indication that this would be an even early overall bottom for the larger correction within the wave C. It might have been part of the larger wave A, it could still be part of the wave B, but the main point is we would expect extensions back higher into this area of resistance. This is why we are actually still keeping it on the chart. We don't have a full confirmation that this structure is going to extend lower. We have not formed here a larger initial 5-wave move to the downside within this area that has a clear indication that after a 3-wave correction we should expect another 5-wave move to the downside at least. So right now we are keeping our options open, and for me here a break above the $60.8 level would be a signal that we should be prepared for a reset of this larger correction within the wave B, but it would not be a signal that this overall structure is going into a more direct breakout. For that, I would actually need to see here a break of the 78.6% retracement of the wave B, the $86.5 level, and it would need to be a very sustained break. Only then can we actually have a more clear assumption that we have indeed already bottomed within either one of these larger corrections in yellow or in white. But right now we aren't focusing on this, because even internally within this structure we can expect further continuation lower, and then within this wave A I would go as far as to say that internally within this structure I would like to see a 5-wave move to be formed to the downside, where right now I would actually assume that we have maybe bottomed within the wave 3, and we can track here an internal area of resistance for such an idea, in an internal area of resistance for a wave 4, but this would be within the idea of a diagonal structure, as it is rather preferred for me that this structure to the downside actually unfolds as a diagonal at this point, and it is not absolutely necessary, but it is quite a significant preference that I have at this point. Now with that said, we have here the resistance levels for the wave 4 between the $51.7 level all the way up to the 61.8% retracement that is at the $53.4 level. If we manage to break above this level, well, I would be prepared for calling an early bottom within this movement to the downside. I would not consider that the overall wave A would be complete at that point. It is on too small of a time frame to have a clear confirmation of that structure having a more significant bottom if we don't manage to extend further. I would be open to such an idea, but it would still not be a call. And in the end, this is on the small time frame. What we are really focusing on for a more direct push to the upside, possibly a reset within the wave B, is again this larger resistance area. And as long as we don't break again here the $60.8 level, the pressure remains still for lower prices, still for further extensions, even within an internal wave 3, yeah, not the entire wave C to the downside. Excuse me, let me track this on a larger scale. But yeah, it would not be continuation for the entire wave C to the downside, but an internal wave C within the wave 3 of this larger structure, because further price decreases are still expected for me on this chart at the moment, and we don't have any bullish signal, at least not one that I can see right now on the chart. And for now, these are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.